Prime Minister Liz Truss announcing that she is resigning as leader of the Conservative Party and will soon resign as Prime Minister of the UK as soon as a replacement can be found in a leadership conference next week. That was quite a short tenureship for Liz Truss. Philip Turle, 6 weeks on the job?
Yeah, just 6 weeks since she won that leadership contest to replace Boris Johnson, and she'll go down as one of the shortest-lived prime ministers in British history. But the whole party, the whole Conservative Party, especially over the last 24 hours, is really in tatters now with no agreements. And I think it all came to a head yesterday with the vote in the House of Commons over fracking, and with these unbelievable scenes of some MPs being marched forward into the House of Commons to vote in favour of the government, even though they were against the idea of fracking and they're against what Liz Truss is doing. The whole Conservative Party completely split. Coupled with that, we've had all of the disaster over the mini budget at the end of September, the sacking of Kwasi Kwarteng, her Chancellor of the Exchequer Finance Minister, the nomination of Jeremy Hunt to take his place, who then completely scrapped everything that Liz Truss had put forward as her plan, her Trussonomics plan to get the country back on its feet. So the position that Liz Truss was in was absolutely untenable. And I think that over the past few days, people have been saying, well, look, she can't carry on because she's lost all credit within the Conservative Party. She's not even in control of what's going on in the Conservative Party. It's now in the hands of Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who is calling the shots. Jeremy Hunt, who was a former leadership contender himself, and a man who supported her rival during that leadership bid, who was unfortunately not elected as far as he's concerned. That was Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer. So now Liz Truss handing in her resignation. That opens the door to yet another leadership challenge and the search for a fifth Tory Prime Minister in the 12 years since they've been in power in the United Kingdom.
It's really an incredible development, Philip. So Liz Truss mentioned there will be this leadership conference next week. Can they find someone so quickly?
Well, the big problem up until now, Jeannie, and I think that it has been that there is a consensus that Liz Truss was not going to be able to stay in the job. But who was going to replace her? Because there is not an agreement by the Conservatives over who that candidate could be. Many people are saying, well, what we could have is a dual leadership for the time being. Penny Mordaunt on one side, who is the leader of the House of Commons, hand in hand with Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor, who came second in the last leadership contest. There are other candidates, maybe Grant Shapps, who's now been named as being the new Home Secretary, taking over from Suella Braverman, who was sacked yesterday. She also would like to be, I think, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, much more right-wing agenda that she would have. So this is going to be a very short campaign. Of course, there are growing calls right across the political spectrum in the United Kingdom, apart from within the Conservative Party, for a general election, for the people to be able to choose the next party that's going to govern the country and indirectly the next Prime Minister. This is something that the Conservative Party, obviously, and Liz Truss in that statement is not going to put forward at the moment as a possibility. But there's definitely going to be growing pressure on the Conservative Party now that Liz Truss is going to call a general election and not just to carry on. The big problem for the Conservatives is before Liz Truss resigns, should we keep her in office and we're sure we're going to lose the next general election, or shall we get rid of Liz Truss and then throw the whole situation up in the air into a situation of uncertainty as to whether we can find a candidate who will bring the party together and guarantee that we'll win the next election, the next legislative election in the UK, which is scheduled to take place in 2024. So still a lot of very big questions that remain without answers this afternoon.
And I wonder what a lot of people in the opposition are thinking or saying to themselves right now as well.
Well, I think the Labour Party, which is the key opposition party in the United Kingdom, will certainly be putting the pressure on the Conservatives now to call for a general election. I think that's unlikely to be called for. But this is certainly, I think, going to enhance their chances when that election does take place of pulling off an election victory. And I think the big fear from the Conservatives is that not only will they will lose extremely badly, and they will be maybe knocked out of the political scene for decades to come as a result of the debacle that's happened over the past few months, which even began while Boris Johnson was still Prime Minister. You have to remember that he was pushed out of office for lying and trying to support some of his allies who were caught with their hands in dubious adventures in the cabinet. He was pushed out, and Liz Truss became the new Prime Minister to try to right all the wrongs of the past. She's certainly been unable to do that, and that's why the Conservative Party is in the mess it's in right now, and forcing Liz Truss out of office and into a whole new position of uncertainty about what exactly is going to happen from now onwards and who is going to lead the party and whether they will have the consensus within the Conservative Party to be able to do the job.
Philip, can we connect the dots at all between what just happened today and Brexit?
I think there is a definite link between Brexit and what's happened today. You have to remember that after the referendum in 2016, this became the rallying call of the Conservative Party and led to the end of David Cameron's tenure as Prime Minister because he was against leaving the European Union. Theresa May then became Prime Minister and she wanted to get Brexit done. She had previously been against leaving the European Union, but then decided that it was because of the vote in 2016 she would go ahead and push Brexit through as best as possible. She was undermined by Boris Johnson because all the attempts she tried to put forward to get Brexit done were not backed by the party. So then she stood down, and she also lost a disastrous general election and lost her majority, which put her in a very weak position. So then Boris Johnson became Prime Minister, and he then called a general election and got a massive majority with this simple phrase, let's get Brexit done. And that was the rallying call that brought the Conservative Party together. But since Brexit has been completed since the beginning of 2021, it's led to splits now in the Conservative Party about exactly which way the party should be going now that Brexit out of the way, which was their rallying call. And I think that has also contributed to all the differences and the incomprehension amongst voters in the UK as to what the Conservatives stand for and what they are going to be doing in the future. And this disastrous tenure by Liz Truss as Prime Minister since September.
All right, Philip, thanks for that. We'll be checking back in with you a lot throughout the day, I'm sure. Philip Turle there speaking to us about that announcement of the resignation of Liz Truss as the British Prime Minister.